So internal mental health stigma is basically self-discrimination that occurs when a person internalizes negative outlooks on mental health and causes negative emotional reactions. The effects include self-isolation, ostracism, decreased healthcare service use, poor health outcomes, and just poor quality of life in general. And I do want to say I have a ton of experience with internalized mental health stigma that has gathered from years and years, but I'm now trying to address it myself. So I'm sort of giving you my own advice at the same time while I'm talking about the subject, because it's very dear to me. It's something that has been a pattern throughout my life for years, and I'm just now getting over it. So I would love for you guys to also be aware of this phenomenon, or just aware of things that you can do to try to overcome this phenomenon. And that can be a sort of common thing amongst other people, for other people as well. That sort of shame that you experience from your friends, from your family, from your strangers, and it doesn't even have to be a direct sort of thing. It doesn't have to be somebody shaming you directly through their own words, like using insults or just dismissing your mental health problems as a whole, or just looking down on it. It doesn't have to be a direct thing. It can also be just an indirect thing when they're just casually talking about mental health in general. That being said, but as far as just indirect sayings from family and friends, it's less damaging, but it's still damaging nonetheless. And also just, again, from society and strangers, hearing a lot of those mental health news stories and mental health media posts that bash mental health or look down on it can definitely also affect you, because you start to think that you do not belong in general society. You aren't able to function as a normal human being as everybody else, and you start to ostracize yourself, and you start to look down on yourself like, why am I not normal? If everybody in society is saying that, what does that mean for me? Especially if it's coming directly from friends and family. You might think that you're just being a burden to your loved ones, and that you're just being a nuisance, that you are hurting your loved ones because you are struggling with mental health, or that your mental health struggles aren't that important, or that it is non-existent. Maybe it just all depends on the sort of stigmatized beliefs that you've been hearing, especially when it comes to stereotypes and prejudices and everything like that, which I will get to. And you just have to realize that where it's coming from, where is this internalized mental health stigma that you have against yourself coming from? That is the first official step to addressing your own internalized mental health stigma. And that being said, after you realize where it's coming from, you will then have to address harmful preconceived notions that you may have gathered from these places of stigma, from these places that have caused you so much hurt, that has led to you hurting yourself and having these damaging beliefs against yourself and your own mental health conditions. But first and most importantly, when you're addressing harmful notions that you may have against yourself, you have to give yourself room to change, room to breathe, and just room in general, because I know people with mental health conditions can put themselves down a lot, and they see the world through these sort of black and white glasses that show a lot of negativity, show a lot of end-all be-all outlooks, just a lot of black and white outlooks. So again, when addressing these notions that you may have, please learn to give yourself room to change and give yourself room to breathe. Because I know it's a very hard thing to sort of encounter, because you're receiving all of this stigma from the outside world, and then you also have to deal with, on top of that, your own internalized mental health stigma. And it can really feel like the world is just attacking you, that the world is trying to get you, that everything is going to be crumbling down in 1 second. But if you are able to, give yourself some room to change and some room to breathe, you will have one weight off of your shoulder. You will try to face the world, even though there is a lot of stigma, first of all, with yourself and not being a part of the problem. Because even if you aren't trying to be a part of the problem, having these sort of thoughts of stigma is making you feel awful, and it's making the sort of general population's stigma against mental health even worse. There are a lot of people that automatically assume how these people act with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, etc., often incorrect. So I know that a lot of people with disorders like that mental health conditions like that. I really don't like to say the word disorders because, it makes it seem like you're not a normal human being, which you are. You just function a little differently. But anyway, especially people with mental health conditions that are not talked about in the general public, or not enough information is spread about those conditions, then people will definitely create more negative stigma, more misconceptions and incorrect stereotypes. So people might think that somebody who lives with depression is just lazy because they aren't able to do certain things when they are going through a mental health crisis, or others might say that people with anxiety are cowardly because they get nervous about every little thing, or just overthink every little thing, or don't want to do certain things because they're anxious about it. Or other people might say that people with mental health conditions are violent or dangerous, and again, this sort of references the more stigmatized mental health conditions such as schizophrenia. I've heard a lot of people say that people with schizophrenia are violent and dangerous individuals, or I've also heard that when it comes to sociopaths, I've heard a lot of people say that they're just violent and dangerous individuals. And some other people might think that showing or talking about mental health makes you weak, which is a very, 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 very common belief amongst the general public. You are going to hear that at least once or twice in your lifetime, probably way, way, way more than that. And lastly, but not least, there are a ton of harmful notions. These are some examples that I could think of at the top of my head. A lot of people say that men shouldn't cry, or that men shouldn't talk or show their emotion, which is a horrible, horrible thing that I really, really cannot wait to address in the future. But I will save that episode for when I actually have another man as a guest on the podcast, because I myself was not born as a male and I do not identify as a male, so I can definitely not speak for their experiences. For me, on my own personal experience, this is just my own personal experiences, take for what you can get from it, disclosing my own mental health struggles and disclosing my mental health conditions, saying that I struggle with depression, anxiety, talking about what it's like living with depression, what it's like living with anxiety. It is a sort of relieving thing, because it's a sort of thing that I can feel normal talking about it. I can bring awareness to it. I can educate people about it and not feel as much shame. Not disclosing can make people shelter their shame and not let other people know about their mental health condition, and just provide or allow a space for shame to exist when you're not disclosing about mental health. But talking about it and becoming in a routine where it's just more normal, it's more comfortable to talk about it, is especially important. Lastly, I do want to say it is a personal choice. You do not have to disclose. That is not your obligation. You don't have to talk about your own mental health conditions with other people. If you feel unsafe, or you feel that the consequences outweigh the benefits, or you just don't want to, you just don't think it's a necessary thing to talk about, you don't have to disclose at all. That is a personal choice, and I really want to get that across. And another thing, you can also just try to empower yourself. Empowerment is a powerful thing. It's in the world. It's in the word. Empowerment can make you feel like you are on top of the world, like you can conquer the world, like you got this, you are a boss.